Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. For more than a year now, the media storyline in immigration has been as mindless and predictable as a Jim Acosta script. The talking points never change. It doesn't matter what the story is. Could be the caravan or family separation, sanctuary cities, even MS-13. The details are irrelevant. Immigration is always good, whether it's legal or not, because immigrants are always good. It doesn't matter where they're from or how much English they speak or how they've lived their lives, what they've done before. Immigrants are always the heart of America. By definition, they're impressive, much more impressive than actual Americans, most of whom are fat and racist. That's Jim Acosta's position. Or it was. You may have noticed that the other channels suddenly seem less eager to talk about immigration. They're de-emphasizing the issue. Why is that? Well, part of the problem may be the caravan, which actually exists and is in Tijuana, Mexico right now. Now, this should be good news for Mexico, if you believe what they've been telling us on TV. If there's one thing we know for certain about penniless Central American immigrants, it's that they tend to found a huge number of wildly successful tech startups. They're at the heart of your economy. And yet, the citizens of Tijuana don't appear to have gotten this message because they don't seem grateful for the caravan. Instead, they look highly annoyed that their city has been invaded by strangers. As the city's mayor noted, when people enter your country illegally, many of them are criminals.
These people are coming in violently, unrespectfully, not as a good law-abiding citizen, and that's what hurt us. It's not all of them, but yes, a lot of them are not really nice people who want to work, who want to integrate to our economy. They're just troublemakers.
A lot of them are not really nice people. They're troublemakers. Imagine an American mayor saying something like that on television. And it got more intense from there. Last night on this show, a Tijuana city councilman told us that the government had to intervene recently to keep Mexican citizens and the caravan members from throwing rocks at each other. Watch.
We had to bring him over here because the neighbors from that part of town, it's called Playas de Tijuana, it's like Tijuana by the sea, they were getting mad and they even started throwing stones at each other. So we had him over here, like 360, but things got out of hand because it kept growing and growing.
Throwing rocks at immigrants? That doesn't happen in this country. It does happen in Mexico, though. People who live in Tijuana are not American. So they haven't been told that expressing their honest views about immigration will get you fired. So they have no problem saying what they really think, and what they really think turns out to be very much like what Donald Trump really thinks, amazingly. Listen.
Should this caravan have been stopped at the Guatemala border?
Of course. I agree with that 100%. It should have.
Your country have to be beware of these people because they are people, they are bad people.
Because they don't belong here. They're just migrants, but it's like the same, in the same case, it's like when Mexican migrants going to the U.S., they're undocumented.
You know of incidences here in Tijuana and in other cities that some of these people that are coming into with these caravans are committing crimes. This is not about racism. We don't dislike a certain group of people because they're from one country or another. We are here because our government has not taken control of these, what we call invasion.
Now, if you're CNN or MSNBC or NBC News or ABC, what do you do with an interview like that? You can't put it on the air because it doesn't make sense according to the rules you've established. You can't really argue that Mexicans are anti-Hispanic racists. That's what you call everyone else who's opposed to immigration. So what do? Well, you just pretend that none of this is happening. It's not real. And that's what they're doing. But that won't work forever. People tend to notice obvious things. They can't help it. And if they keep noticing obvious things, their views change. And that's why the consensus on immigration is changing fast. Even Hillary Clinton and John Kerry recently warned that mass immigration can destabilize countries, as it's done in Europe. They're right, of course. It's happening here, too. A new analysis of census data shows that 63% of non-citizens in this country receive some kind of welfare benefits. That's not what they told you, but those are the numbers from the census. Even among legal immigrants, the best kind, the ones who become naturalized citizens, fully half are on government assistance. By the way, that's well above the native average. Now, leaving aside the moral considerations, Does it work as a math question? Well, it would work in a country with infinite resources. Is America a country with infinite resources? Well, look around. Every night, hundreds of thousands of our citizens, Americans, sleep outdoors on the street. They're homeless. The country's middle class is shrinking and dying younger for the third year in a row. Again, these are American citizens. Some of them probably think they should have first dibs on help from the government, but they're not getting it. And by the way, looking forward, here's a question that no one's considering. Will the mass immigration we're now watching make this country richer or poorer? In fact, the majority of our immigrants have only a high school education or less. Many of them know very little English, some none at all. Now, that was a difficult problem to solve 100 years ago during our first major wave of immigration, but consider what it means now at a time when automation is killing entire sectors of our economy. How are immigrants with low levels of education and low levels of English supposed to succeed in an increasingly high-tech, skills-based economy? And by the way, how about our own vulnerable workers? Do they benefit from the presence of these immigrants? These are real questions. They're critical questions that Washington should be thinking about deeply and answering. But Washington isn't thinking about them, and Washington can't answer them. So instead, they're trying to ban the conversation from taking place. We're going to try again anyway to have it. Luis Miranda is a former DNC communications director, and he joins us tonight. Luis, thanks a lot for coming on.
Hey, thanks, Tucker. I appreciate the opportunity to have an honest conversation on this, particularly as we're also remembering President George H.W. Bush, who taught us that we can disagree on some of these issues, but do it respectfully. So I really appreciate the chance to do this.
Well, I do too.
Yeah, I went to the Capitol yesterday just after leaving the studio here to see him. Took my kids, and that was one of the things we talked about, is that there's going to be different perspectives on these issues, but we can talk about them respectfully.
Right.
And I think what you've laid out here brings up some very legitimate issues. The question is,
that's what I like about what's happening in Tijuana, and I feel deeply for the people of Tijuana because I think they're going through what a lot of Americans have gone through. But because it is Tijuana and it is Mexico, we can't dismiss them as anti-Hispanic. And so we have to look more clearly at what their concerns are. And so my question to you is a very simple one. Looking at the concerns that we just played on tape, and those are real, does it make you a little more empathetic toward our fellow Americans who have similar feelings?
I think we have to be empathetic all around here, which includes people who have legitimate concerns, but a lot of those concerns are being stoked without a basis of reality. And so here's the problem, that a lot of these immigrants that are part of this caravan are decent people who are fleeing either violence or economic situations that are untenable. But they're victims all around because they're being victimized by human traffickers and smugglers that want to take advantage of them.
I agree with that.
And so there's actually an AP analysis that just came out that 4,000 of these people have disappeared in the last few years on the way.
Yes.
In other words, their families have no idea what happened to them. They either got murdered or worse just along the way. And so there's a legitimate humanitarian crisis of people who were being taken advantage of and victimized on that end.
I totally agree, but I just want to shine the light on the victims who don't really get representation of any kind in the press, and those are the citizens who are having to absorb large populations of, and I agree with you, largely decent people. I think most migrants want what I want, which is a better life for their families. I get it.
That's exactly right.
I don't think most of them are criminals.
I've
always thought that. But hold on. But I think it's important to empathize as deeply with the citizens whose lives are being upended by the arrival of these immigrants as it is with the immigrants themselves. So when you see this, can you say that, American citizens say, I don't want any more immigration. We've had more than we can handle. They're not just racist, are they? I mean, they have a point. Do they not?
I don't think they're racist. I think it's important that they also understand the other side of this, which is that immigrants have actually made our economy a lot stronger through the years. You touched on it a little bit at the beginning. Let me add some color to that, which includes that our population is aging. We have baby boomers retiring, and a lot of the people that we are able to replace in the economy are because of immigration. Now, we want to do that ideally in a legal and orderly fashion, but the reality is that we have a huge advantage over Europe.
Hold on. I need to ask this question. You say our population is aging. We're not reproducing ourselves. Why do you think that is? Nobody seems to pause and ask, why can't young Americans afford to get married and have children, afford to buy homes and cars? And their solution, the elite solution, is we'll just bring in new people. But what about the Americans, the young people? I'm a 30-year-old American. I can't afford to have kids. Does anybody care about that person? I mean, maybe there's a real problem here that really? Because I never hear that person addressed ever. No one
it's
ever
not
says
just the
that.
United
It's like,
States.
oh,
This
we
is
need
happening
immigration.
it's an industrialized country issue more than
but
it has
I'm an
to do
American.
with.
But hold on, I'm an American. Okay, so my concern is for my fellow Americans, and they can't afford to have children. But rather than fix their problems or even think about them, we're like, we'll just import new children. Does that seem like a sort of ass-backward way to approach this?
We should be able to do both. Look, over the last 10 years, American companies and stocks have outperformed the rest of the world by a lot. American companies and the economy have been so strong over the last 10 years compared to anything else in the world. And part of the reason for that is because we have an economy that is constantly renewing itself. And so we absolutely should be able to have an economy where people who want to have children can do so. But it doesn't mean that we don't have the space to absorb it.
No, but hold on. No, but that's not what you're saying. Hold on. You just said we need to bring in people because Americans aren't reproducing in sufficient numbers. And my question is, why aren't our leaders thinking about how our people can afford to have children? They don't even consider that a subject worth studying, much less trying to fix. It's just like, oh, well, they're not having enough kids.
But
why
those
doesn't
are mutually
anyone care
exclusive
enough?
things. Those are mutually exclusive things.
You're saying that our low birth rates are the justification for immigration. I'm saying our low birth rates are a tragedy that say something awful about our economy and the selfish stupidity of our leaders.
It's a combination of our growth and our prosperity that enables us to have a stronger economy. So there's definitely a both sides to this where you can look at, well, who are going to be hurt. But when you've looked at states like Georgia and others that have implemented anti-immigrant measures that forced a lot of these immigrants out, what you saw was food rotting on the vines, a lot of lost crops because there weren't enough people there to work them. And so the reality is that we can both do something about strengthening the economy for people who are suffering and who are American and who have lived here their whole lives. They want to have children. They want to have an opportunity to do better than their parents
Maybe someone should care about them a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's the most important thing. Nothing is even close to as
But that doesn't mean that we have to demonize the immigrants who are legitimate victims of this process.
I'm not demonizing anybody. I'm not against the immigrants. I'm just for Americans, and nobody cares about them. It's like, shut up, you're dying, we're going to replace you. And it's deeply offensive. Anyway, we're out of time. I hope you will come back because I enjoyed that conversation. Thank you.
Likewise,
Luis.
Tucker. Thank you.